Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of AustLit Environments for Cross-Curriculum Priorities. I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here. My name is Maggie Nolan, and I'm the proud director of AustLit. Before we begin, I just want to let you know that we are recording this event, and the link to the recording will be shared with all those registered. So thanks, Bianca. So there are people from all over Australia who are joining us online this afternoon for this launch, and I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands on which we are meeting today and pay my respects to elders past and present, and to extend that acknowledgement to any Indigenous people online. I particularly want to acknowledge Professor Tracy Bunda, Professor of Indigenous Education here in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies Unit at the University of Queensland, and thank her for all her support of AustLit. We recognise the role Indigenous people have played in storytelling, sharing culture, and passing on knowledge over millennia, which continues to enrich and inspire us. I really want to thank the Outer Foundation. I know there are a few people from Outer online here today. Thank you so much for coming. This project was made possible by the generous support of Outer, for which we are very, very grateful. I'm now going to hand over to Professor Anne-Marie Carroll for a faculty welcome. In addition to being Associate Dean Research in the Faculty of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences, and Professor of Educational Psychology in the School of Education at the University of Queensland, Anne-Marie is also a registered psychologist and teacher. Her research focuses on understanding the impact of emotions, attention and behaviour on learning throughout child and adolescent development, and the development of interventions for children and young people to bring about positive change in their lives. Given that AustLit and this project is also very much about bringing positive change, I'm delighted that Anne-Marie is able to join us and welcome everyone to this special event. Over to you, Anne-Marie.
Thanks very much for the warm welcome, Maggie, and good afternoon, everyone. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the many lands on which we meet today and acknowledge our Indigenous colleagues present online. Thank you so much for joining us today for the launch of the AustLit Environments for Cross-Curriculum Priorities. I know the team is very excited about getting started. So on behalf of the University of Queensland and the Faculty of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences, I'm absolutely delighted to see this project come to fruition, thanks to the generous support of the Outer Foundation. We're incredibly proud of AustLit and its dedicated team. Their ongoing work, especially in developing valuable educational resources and enriched data, is instrumental for the sector. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this project and what it can achieve in terms of growing digital literacy, sparking students' curiosity for Australian literature and storytelling, and equipping them with the essential skills as database users. We're also incredibly fortunate to have the support of the Outer Foundation on other projects in the faculty. For example, the First Nations Youth Digital Storytelling Project with Felicity Meekins. And there are opportunities going forward across our School of Education in digital inclusion and digital innovation for children and adolescents with mental health issues, in the School of Social Science in the area of homelessness, and in the School of Languages and Cultures in the preservation of Indigenous languages. The work in our Centre for Digital Cultures and Societies also offers strong alignment with the imperative around governance of the internet, particularly how we build new tools and frameworks for making targeted advertising and content on digital platforms observable, explainable, and accountable. But for now, we're turning our sights on this really important project, and we're looking forward to seeing where it leads. So thank you for your support. Enjoy the afternoon, and back to you now, Maggie.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. So I'm assuming that people already know what AustLit is if they're here. But for those who don't, AustLit is a comprehensive bibliographical and biographical database of Australian storytelling. It is a critical piece of national digital research infrastructure and the longest running digital humanities project in the country, having gone online back in 2001. It is also the only national bibliographical project of this scale anywhere in the world. No other country has even attempted such a project. AustLit brought together a range of data sets from institutions and research projects across the country, and last year it celebrated its 1 millionth work record, fittingly with Alexis Wright's wonderful novel Praiseworthy. It also has almost 200,000 agent or author records. That is a lot of data. AustLit is not a full text database. We hold data about texts, not the texts themselves, although we do have about 6,000 out of copyright colonial texts in full text. And we also link to online resources everywhere, including reviews and research activities. Elsewhere. One of the things that makes AustLit so special is its search engine, which enables really nuanced and finely grained searches. If you want to find out, for example, how many film scripts were written by women born in Brisbane in the 1950s and 1960s, you can. Or if you want to find all the reviews of romance novels that were written by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander writers, or even Wiradjuri writers, you can. If you want to know which Miles Franklin Award-winning novels were set in Perth, AustLit can tell you that too. And for teachers, if you want to find texts that were written by or about places you live, work and teach in, AustLit is the resource for you. AustLit also houses a number of research projects and digital exhibitions, 80 at the last count. The most significant of these is Black Words, a database of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander storytelling that was launched at the State Library of Queensland by Uncle Sam Watson in 2007. Professor Anita Heiss, AM, the well-known and prolific Wiradjuri author, was Black Words' first coordinator for many years, and more recently, Bigumbul and Waka Waka author Dr. Melanie Saywood has become the Black Words coordinator, and we are delighted to have Mel join the team and to have Mel here with us today. Thanks, Mel. Other projects include Writing Disability in Australia, Narratives of Climate Change, and many more. We also host what we call Necessary Conversations, which curates lists of picture books, children's fiction, and young adult novels that are designed to spark important conversations for social learning, including on topics such as body image, homelessness, and domestic and family violence, all of which are freely available. So these projects harness the vastness of AustLit data in order to tell particular kinds of stories or to produce particular kinds of resources. And that's also the case for this project, the one we're launching today, AustLit Environments for Cross-Curriculum Priorities. We knew we had a lot of data aligned to the cross-curriculum priorities, but we also know that sometimes the complexity of AustLit, not to mention the sheer amount of data, can be really overwhelming, and that busy teachers don't have the time to draw all these resources together. AustLit is a subscription database, and the subscriptions are used to maintain the database. This is why this funding from the Outer Foundation is so meaningful, and why this resource will sit in front of AustLit's paywall for all to access. We have been extremely fortunate to have been able to employ Dr. Amy Schoenens as the Senior Research Assistant and Project Lead on AustLit Environments for Cross-Curriculum Priorities. Amy has been with AustLit since 2008 on various projects and has previously worked as a researcher and a librarian. Earlier this year, she completed her PhD at QUT titled The Digital Media Ecologies of Young Adult Fiction, Exploring Participatory Cultures for Team Readers. We couldn't have got luckier. Amy is now going to run through the project and give you an overview of the learning environments. There will be time for questions at the end of Amy's presentation, so you can pop those in the chat or raise your hand when Amy's finished. Thanks very much, Amy. Off you go.
There we go. Thank you, Maggie and Anne-Marie. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for attending our launch for the AustLit Environments for Cross-Curriculum Priorities, or AECCP. Today, I'm going to take you through the AECCP project and outline the content and structure of the learning environments. I'll then leave the PowerPoint behind and go into one of the learning environments to show you more closely how they work. AECCP is a space designed to support learning and teaching within the Australian Curriculum V9 cross-curriculum priorities. The project houses learning environments to provide rich, curated content and resources for teachers and librarians to help them to identify texts relevant to the 3 cross-curriculum priorities. The learning environments are also designed to support digital literacy development for students as database users. The purpose of the project has been to provide educational support for locating content related to the curriculum priorities through AustLit records. Our records forge links between literary works and subjects and essentially trace the history of a work in all of its forms and iterations. As bibliographers, this allows us to see and establish connections between the cross-curriculum priorities and Australian storytelling in all of its forms in interesting ways. For this project, we conducted lengthy and nuanced searches of our database to present data in accessible and less formalised ways. And while we have made the information more digitally inclusive and accessible by making these resources open access, the project is also an invitation to delve deeper into the database, to learn database skills yourselves, and to show students how databases can be used for both educational purposes and for choosing reading material. We had several goals for AECCP. Firstly, to provide educators with learning environments built with rich curated content from AustLit to support embedding the cross-curriculum priorities in their teaching. The project offers supplementary resources to enhance your teaching that do not require that you spend too much time combing through our vast database for information. Secondly, to provide opportunities to learn digital literacy skills using our data and through our database. Additionally, our hope was to demonstrate that data is relevant beyond the STEM disciplines. Databases are where critical information is stored, but we can help foster a solid understanding of what databases are, what they can do, and why they matter. For many young people, data is something that is only relevant to STEM disciplines. But this project dispels this myth by drawing upon AustLit's vast data to provide educators, librarians, and secondary students with a deep understanding of how data can be understood in the humanities, and to show how information about storytelling and literature specifically can be searched and synthesized for special purposes. AECCP content is designed to support the teaching of the Australian Curriculum V9 cross-curriculum priorities in secondary school classrooms. It can also be tied to the general capability of digital literacy. The majority of the resources associated with this project are aimed at teachers and librarians. Many of them are also aimed at secondary students, and many aspects of the project can be adapted to be incorporated into student-appropriate content and tasks. Any work connected to this project can be used in an English classroom. And while AustLit is primarily about Australian literature and storytelling, our database information expands beyond the obvious learning area of English and into other learning areas such as drama, languages, history, and occasionally learning areas such as mathematics, geography, and dance. There are 3 learning environments in AECCP to reflect the 3 cross-curriculum priorities, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures, Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia, and sustainability. A learning environment is a project space that presents AustLit data as curated content for educational purposes. To develop the environments, we conducted complex searches, collected data through the database, and made connections between resources on your behalf. In this way, the learning environments present data in more accessible formats. In each learning environment, we have identified titles and resources relevant to the particular cross-curriculum priority to provide contextual information. The titles and resources we identify through AustLit database searches are contextualized with author biographical details and other information, as well as teaching ideas, content descriptions, and external teaching resources where possible. We also provide links to explore the work further in the database. Each learning environment contains a specific set of features, which I will outline in more detail shortly. The components of the learning environments include suggested texts for incorporating cross-curriculum priorities, organising ideas, digital literacy exercises using AustLit data, examples of AustLit data visualised and accompanied by additional digital literacy exercises, reading suggestions around the curriculum priorities, and links to additional related AustLit content relevant to the project. Okay, Bianca, if you just want to skip through to the next one. There we go. The largest part of each learning environment is the sections dedicated to the organising ideas for the cross-curriculum priorities. As such, the structure for the learning environment is informed by the curriculum web content for the cross-curriculum priorities. As you know, the 3 priorities each contain sets of organising ideas grouped around contextualising themes. For example, the cross-curriculum priority Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia contains 3 organising ideas, which are knowing Asia and its diversity, understanding Asia's global significance, and growing Asia-Australia engagement. In the curriculum, these themes contain their own organising ideas, which are then linked to learning areas by content descriptions. Our aim has been to suggest text for embedding and teaching specifically to the organising ideas. For each organising idea, we have identified a number of suggested texts. Because we are a database about storytelling and literature, the number of suggested texts per organising idea varies depending on the organising idea itself and the number of reasonable connections we can make between our data and learning areas. For example, there will be more suggested texts for English than there are for design and technologies or science. So how did we identify relevant texts? We approached the project in the first instance through the cross-curriculum priorities themselves, rather than through a learning area or a text. So we accessed the curriculum online, chose a priority, then looked at each organising idea. Within the organising ideas, we examined the learning areas and then the content descriptions to determine if there was relevancy to our database. So you can see on the slide here the process. We looked at sustainability, then the organising idea worldviews, then worldviews SW2, for example, learning area English, and then the content description. So looking more closely at this organising idea, it states, identify and explore ideas, points of view, characters, events and/or issues in literary texts drawn from historical, social and/or cultural contexts by First Nations Australian and wide-ranging Australia and world authors. It comes with the elaboration, exploring depictions of the city or the bush in Australian poems and short stories from different eras. So clearly this is very relevant to our database as we record Australian storytelling in all of its forms. And we also house the Black Words dataset, which records writing by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Now, to identify a text that could be directly connected to this organising idea broadly and the content description specifically, we conducted a search of the database. In this instance, we searched for short stories about the bush in the Blackwords dataset. Now, this retrieved over 130 results. We then explored the results, focusing primarily on works that are recently published and therefore likely to be readily available in libraries and bookstores. So the top result here, Vermin Proof Fence, which is a short story by Rick Slager, was chosen as a suggested text to use within the sustainability priority as a match to this particular organising idea and content description. So if you are trying to meet a very specific element of the curriculum, this project is a great way to meet that need. The suggested texts are accompanied by information largely curated from our database, including an introduction to the work, author details, publication information, themes, and teaching ideas and resources, which might be either internal to AustLit or developed externally, such as through Reading Australia or publishers' websites. The suggestions are accompanied by reader advisory information, links to AustLit records related to the work, and one or two links to media about the text, such as a podcast interview with the author or a YouTube clip. We provided this for each suggestion. Each learning environment contains a section on using AustLit data to support digital literacy development. Secondary students are bombarded by information via the internet and sometimes lack the skills to understand not only if the information is authoritative and reliable, but also how the information is collected, synthesized, and disseminated, nor how it could be used to enhance their study. The digital literacy space of the learning environments demonstrates how storytelling and literature data, that is humanities data as opposed to STEM data, and database searching can be used to develop digital literacy. The first section introduces predetermined searches that can be used for exploring and finding other texts related to the cross-curriculum priorities in Australian literature through AustLit. These searches could be adapted as research topics to develop digital literacy skills through the database. The second section provides 2 exercises per learning environment to support database skill development. These exercises are designed to help students use the AustLit database to return specific targeted results. In the visual data component of the learning environments, we provide case studies of visualized data to demonstrate its usefulness as part of digital literacy. There are distinct visual data exercises for each learning environment. The sustainability learning environment centres on creating GIFs using book covers with a case study of young adult fiction and climate change. The Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia learning environment focuses on turning statistical data into a visual graph. The case study in this instance is works about the Vietnam War and Vietnamese people. And the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Histories and Cultures learning environment contains networked data visualizations that can be used for exploring data on Indigenous storytelling and demonstrate how visual data can be used as a research tool. There are also additional digital literacy exercises and general how-tos for searching AustLit with video content embedded on the main project page. The fourth component of the learning environments contains some recommendations for recreational or directed reading related to the cross-curriculum priorities. It also identifies examples of authors writing on the subject. And while these suggestions can be used by students as reading ideas, they can also be used by teachers around which to develop class lessons to explore author biographical material or texts around particular subjects. The remaining section across each learning environment is AustLit content and databases related to the curriculum priorities, which could be used as a further resource for teaching and learning. So, for example, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learning environment links out to the Blackbird's calendar, which also has some has been recently updated and also now contains its own lesson plans. In addition, the Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia learning environment contains a section on finding information about Australian stories in Asian languages. And again, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures learning environment contains an additional 2 sections. One with resources created by First Nation educators to aid the teaching of Indigenous content and embedding Indigenous perspectives, and another on finding information about stories in Indigenous languages in the database. So these might be translations or bilingual texts or texts in, say, Wiradjuri language. I'll just mention one more thing about the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures learning environment. All of the suggested texts contained in this learning environment are by First Nations authors only, or co-authored by First Nations writers. And for the purposes of today's demonstration, I'm going to take you through the Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia learning environment. Incidentally, this cross-curriculum priority also has the least direct links to English, according to the priority section of the website, and how we navigated through that process. So you'll be able to see how much we've been able to provide for you in spite of that, that connection. Okay, just give me a moment to set this up. Bear with me. Okay. Before I go onto our project, I just want to briefly revisit how we approached making connections with the content through the curriculum. Obviously, we start here with the curriculum priorities. We choose a priority and then worked our way through the organising ideas and then addressed each learning area, examining content descriptions and finding connections that way. Okay, over to AECCP. On our main project page here, you can see the menu on the left, which has a couple of different elements. It has an outline of the learning environments and the structure, much of which I've discussed here today, and sections on searching with AustLit and additional digital literacy content. And on the right, here, we have the learning environments. So I'm just going to take you to the Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia. On each of the learning environment opening pages, we have a review of the contents and a specific outline of how it meets the curriculum, how it aligns to the curriculum. Again, the main menu on the left. The first sections are the organising ideas I mentioned before. So as I said, knowing Asia and its diversity, understanding Asia's global significance, and growing Asia-Australia engagement. Okay. So here we revisit the organising idea itself and explain how it's met in this learning environment. So looking at this first organising idea here, AAK1, is stated as people of the Asia region are diverse in backgrounds, experiences, stories, and religions. And below these statements across each of the learning environments, we identify which learning areas we have suggested texts for. So for AAK1, for example, we have English, dance, drama, health and phys ed, civics and citizenship, and Chinese. So just looking at, I'll open up the first one here, Tiger Daughter. So first we just have a synopsis of the story, some brief information about the author, and we mention here publication details. Now, in cases where there are various editions of text that we think are relevant, so in this instance, we've mentioned that there is a dyslexic edition and an audiobook available for students who may need those kinds of works. We also mention the genre, cover the themes, and for some texts we have provided some features of interest. So the chapters in The Tiger Daughter, for instance, contain title chapters in English and Chinese Mandarin. Beyond the features of interest, we have some teaching ideas, just a few in this instance, and make links out to external teaching resources if they are available in our database. So these might be teaching notes by publishers or Reading Australia material. This is then followed by content descriptions. So these are the descriptions that we found going through that process I showed you before, and we have linked the text specifically to those descriptions. So in this case, we have linked Tiger Daughter to English for years 7, Health and Phys Ed for 7 to 10, and Chinese for years 7 to 8. Following on from the content descriptions, there is some reader advisory information. So this mentions the publisher's recommendations for years and any notes that may, any content that is notable, we will mention here as a form of trigger warning, I suppose. We then provide links that take you into the database if you wish, and then links to some media. So there might be some podcast interviews or some YouTube clips, some book trailers, that sort of thing. So obviously these content descriptions are part of the F to 10 or 7 to 10 curriculum and don't apply in the same way to senior secondary curriculum. However, all of the suggested texts in these learning environments can also be used for senior years. So you can see the rich information here that we've pulled together from our data about the work and associated with each of the suggested texts. We made specific connections to the cross-curriculum priorities. Okay, I'm just going to close this tile here. And you can see the different types of resources here. So Tiger Daughter is a novel, but we have drama here, a graphic novel, Twisted Elegance is a short story, and there are a few anthologies there of autobiographical stories. These tiles, they can be used as they're mainly used for resources for educators, but they can also be used to students to demonstrate the interconnectedness of stories and data across websites and the database and other forms of media like YouTube or a podcast. So moving on now to using AustLit data to support digital literacy. On this page, you can see we have some guided searches and exercises to support the development of database skills. We have links as well to conducting searches if you are not already familiar with the database. They're housed on the main project page. So these ideas are results lists that students can practice with to learn how to use the database, how to read a record, and understand how records link to each other. And down below we have some exercises specifically to support digital literacy classes. So we have one here for years 7 to 9 around the anthology Growing Up Asian in Australia. And the one aimed at years 10 to 12 is designed around conducting more complex searches. And it's about searching our database for books in certain regions. So works that might be set in Japan or Korea or something like that. We then also outline in what ways these lesson plans meet the curriculum in terms of general capabilities. So we have digital literacy here, and any relevant learning areas such as digital technologies, and in this instance, history. Okay. Now, for the moment, I'm just going to skip over the visual data section of this learning environment because I want to show you something very exciting at the end. So we also have the recreational reading section and additional content that I'll allow you to explore in your own time. And lastly, we have the literature in Asian languages section. So for this part of the learning environment, we have provided search instructions to help students and teachers and librarians work through the processes of finding works to use in languages classrooms. So these might be bilingual texts, works first published in a language other than English, or translations of works. So we have the searching instructions here for language and the video content, which just works through, it just demonstrates how to conduct the search. And though it doesn't have sound, it does have captions to support going through the video. There's additional information here about searching specifically for translations. And again, we have the video content for you. And below that, exercises for searching for works in specific languages. So in this instance, we have Chinese, Hindi, Korean, Vietnamese, and Japanese. Okay, just moving on to the final part now. I'm going to hop over to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Histories and Cultures learning environment to look at some visual data. Okay, so for this section of the visual data, I'm going to show you a networked map, which visualizes how all of our data is connected in the database. There are 3 maps. There is one for Wiradjuri and Noongar and Yolngu. They show interconnections between authors and illustrators, playwrights, and so on, and organizations like publishers. I'm just going to open up on the larger screen here. Okay, so this is a visualization of Wiradjuri authors in our database. And organized. But we can also conduct specific searches. So you'll see at the top, you have a network that you can choose from, and this spot here to search for an agent. So because this is a Wiradjuri network, I'm just going to look at Anita Heiss. Okay, and there's Anita there. Now her network through this data looks large and extensive. We have connections here with Simon and Schuster, Audible, PlayLab, Magabala Books, and again a connection with Sandy Sullivan, Cordite Press. Yeah, it just goes on. So using this visual data as a research tool, we can discuss and examine important issues associated with publishing trends and First Nations works. And it also shows how vastly prolific some authors are and the wealth of knowledge out there. This network map has a lesson plan with accompanying digital literacy exercises, as do the other visual data exercises for the other 2 learning environments. This is an excellent way for students to familiarise themselves with this type of visual data and also to explore Indigenous literature data in an interesting way. So leaving you here with this exciting visualisation, I want to thank you for listening to the overview of this project and for your patience, as I said, cross-curriculum priorities over and over again. Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you so much, Amy. I mean, there were some comments there about just how much work has been done there, and it's true. It's an incredible amount of work. And when Amy said we, she was usually meaning I. You know, she did so much of this. She really led the way. So thank you so much, Amy. So we do have a bit of time for questions if people have specific questions or things they want to know. We could, for the purposes of this, we could only give you a bit of a taster and hope that you'll use this as an invitation to explore these questions further, or these resources and learning environments further. So yeah, and yeah, thank you very much, Ricky. So now, in terms of, somebody has asked, Nicole has asked about access to the cross-curricular priorities page. Bianca, do you want to just drop the link into the Zoom chat? So no, you don't need to log in to AustLit. There's the project page there, and we'll be, now that we're launching it, we'll be able to share that quite widely, and including for all the people that registered that couldn't make this as well. So any other questions or comments?
So Nicole has also asked whether from the homepage we need to log in to access the Cross-Curricular Priorities project.
Yep. So do you mean?
So Nicole, for that, we'd say this project, these landing pages that Amy's just shown you, they sit in front of the paywall. So you don't need to log into AustLit to access that material. All the recommended readings, all of those lists of works.
Yeah, and I think there are points within the AECCP where at some point you will hit AustLit data, but there's a huge resource in front of the paywall, and all of the stuff Amy demonstrated to you, which is reproduced across multiple texts, and all of the priority areas and the ideas, organising ideas, all of that is freely available.
Yeah, so I'll just chime in there and say that includes that visualized data I showed you at the end. That is not behind the paywall. That is there for everyone to use.
So, and Emily has asked, so what is behind the paywall is actually all of the data. So the 1 million work records, the over 1 million work records, the 200,000 agent records. So there's a huge amount of data behind the paywall. But this particular project really, thanks to the generosity of the Outer Foundation, because we wouldn't have been able to do this without that support. So there's still a lot of fantastic information there for people who are interested in exploring data in more depth or doing more generalized searches around AustLit. But for the purposes of this project, which is really linking to the priorities, it's all there, yeah, freely available, and yeah, with great gratitude to Alda. Any other questions or things that people would like to know? I know it's a lot of information and a lot to take in, so and it will take some time. But I think what we had really hoped was to be able to take what we know we have, which is an incredible amount of really high quality data that has, you know, all of those 1 million records and 200,000 records have all been indexed by hand. So to take that data and to curate it in such a way that it was really user-friendly for people who are looking for ways to incorporate those cross-curriculum priorities into their teaching and into the classroom. And it was great to see Victoria there talking about being able to use it in the tertiary classroom as well, and with education students. I'm completely delighted to hear that. Okay. Well, I think if there's no more questions, I think we can. Oh, there's one new message. I'll just take a look at that.
Hamish has his hand up as well, Maggie.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Thanks, Katrina. I was actually looking for the little raise hand symbol. I couldn't find it. This is amazing. This is really impressive. As an educator that's worked across both, particularly in the sustainability cross-curricular priorities with my work at cool.org, but also in the Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia priorities, I can see lots of other major education bodies that should often, it might pass by their awareness and their understanding of what you've actually got archived here and categorized. Have you got plans to make sure that the major bodies like ACARA, ESA, English Teachers Associations get a heads up on this? Because these are the kinds of things that I know they don't know how to make these links that you've done. So just making sure that, yeah, you've certainly from my work at Cool, I'm happy to kind of help share some of this work, but I think other major education bodies in Australia should make sure that they realise what you've curated here.
Thank you so much, Hamish. Yes, we do intend to share it fairly, as widely as we possibly can via our own newsletter and social media, and also we do have connections here through the State Library of Queensland and ETAC and Ottawa, and there's actually a lot of people who registered that couldn't come but wanted to register so they could get the recording. But I would super appreciate, we all would, if those of you that are here and have seen how fantastic this resource is, if you could share that amongst your own networks, because AustLit has tended to be understood as a kind of scholarly resource for literary studies researchers in tertiary institutions. And, this is something that was really geared towards addressing a need that we kept hearing about again and again and again from teachers, which is we want to do this work, we just don't know how, and we don't know how to bring together all the information. So I see that Natasha has asked about plans to do this for the English curriculum more specifically. We would love to do this this kind of work, extend this kind of work, Natasha. At the moment, this was a funded project from ALDA, and we'll be needing to seek more funding for any additional work. So really, with our current model, we can only just maintain and keep up to date this very comprehensive database. Oh, we need to go on a roadshow. Yeah, good idea.
Maggie Kamina has asked if they can share the recording with other teachers at their schools.
I'm very happy for people to share this recording very widely. We just made it for people who were registered so that we weren't, but we'll be sharing this recording quite widely ourselves. So please feel free to do so. Yeah. Okay. So yes, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Many thanks again to the ALDA Foundation who funded this brilliant project. I particularly want to thank Amy, who took on this project with such gusto and exceeded our expectations really in so many ways. We are just so thrilled, and we're really proud of what you've been able to achieve for the community, really. Amy has also, I wanted to acknowledge, been ably supported by Dr. Katrina Mills, our wonderful content manager, Brendan Gion, AustLit software developer who put together the amazing network map, Bianca Milroy, who looked after comms and engagement for us with this event and provided project support. And there was also a small team of student interns who would come in and out and do small parts of the project, and all their names are on the project pages. There were too many to name. We will be sending out the recording to registered attendees within a week. And Amy has really just given you a taster of what she's done. So we really do invite you to explore it. And we really invite you to share it with your colleagues. If you think this is a useful resource, people working in the education space are much more able to get the information out about the resource than we are. So, but you can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and X, so you can find us in those various locations. AustLit really sees engaging with our community of users and literature lovers as vitally important. If you have any feedback on AustLit Environments for cross-curriculum priorities, we've got Amy for another month, who can, she'll be kind of tidying up and doing some small additions and enhancements to the project. And we do have the capacity to incorporate comments and suggestions, so please send them through to the email address on the slide. And also, if you have broader questions or feedback in relation to AustLit, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We are always happy to hear from the AustLit community and keen to support you in whatever way we can. We do PDs for various teacher groups and, for groups of librarians as well. So please do reach out. Don't be there scratching your head, because we're really, really happy to help. So just looking, are there any? They're all wonderful. Thank you.
No new questions.
So without further ado, and 5 minutes before 5, or here, wherever we are, I know people are everywhere, I'm proud and delighted to be launching AustLit Environments for cross-curriculum priorities, and very grateful to you all for joining us for this special celebration. Thank you.